Lina, directly over to you from a financial services perspective. Most financing is attractive where you've got short tenors. And one of the issues that you typically have in sustainable finance projects is that we don't really think we can manage a risk that runs for 10 years, 15 years. What would you say the banking sector, or what is your role in trying to change that culture, that mindset that says, actually, let's take a long-term view on this type of investment or financing?
Yeah, I mean, if you do sustainable finance, you kind of think about everything in terms of a longer gestation period type of thing. Because if we were to kind of think about the new technologies that are coming up and the deployment of these technologies, whether it's in the utilities sector or otherwise, but particularly in the utilities sector, I think it's really important to take a kind of a longer term view around how you structure transactions so that they are suitable for that kind of projects and for the deployment of some of these projects. And going to kind of the point that you were talking about in terms of partnerships and what success actually looks like in a partnership, I think it hinges on what you're trying to do. So one of the things that we've seen is actually being able to work with different sectors, whether it's kind of bringing in the public sector and the private sector together around the same table, coming up with solutions like innovative financing solutions around the different technologies, but also structuring them in a way that ensures bankability. And what makes that important is that it's not just the financiers who are just sitting around the table and basically telling what is right or wrong, but actually bringing in the industry on the same table and discussing, what actually works, what is practical, what will make sense. Do long-term offtake contracts for 20 years work in the hydrogen sector, for example, or in the carbon capture sector? What is actually out there in the market, and how do we kind of bring solutions together to create the right bankability and the right structure that we can launch in the market? And by doing that, we're never going to be able to do a single entity might be able to do one or two projects, but I think in order for us to kind of be able to do that successfully, bringing more than one financial institution around the table, pulling in the right, the public sector, the MDBs, DFIs, ECAs, and tapping into the different solutions would actually make these projects a lot more kind of bankable and realistic.
Brilliant. And speaking of bankability, what sorts of projects are actually attracting capital? Maybe if you could just give anecdotally or statistically, who would you say?
Yeah. I mean, I think. Look, I can obviously speak from perspective of what we see in the market, but I think a lot of the projects that seem to be capturing a lot of focus are the kind of greener ones on the spectrum, or the transition ones, if we can make that differentiation. And the reason for that is because of the trend of where things are heading and the importance that's being placed on sustainability, whether it is from stakeholders, governments, and even consumers as well, in terms of what they're looking at. So there's a lot of focus on hydrogen. Obviously, we just heard the previous panel speaking about that and the technicalities and the nuances of that. Similarly, on the carbon capture side of things, similarly on looking at new markets that are developing as a result of some of these technologies. For example, how do we take advantage of the carbon markets? Is there a role there to be played? Nuclear is another one as well. How do these kind of factor into the whole chain? But more importantly as well, it's important to also think about the geographical and the regional nuances. So, for example, what would be attractive in one part of the world might not be as attractive in another part of the world, and that's why it's really important to look at things from the perspective of where we are and how we, whether we are trying to leapfrog or we're trying to transition slowly from one technology to another, one energy source to another. So it really differs, but I think these are some of the things that we are seeing a lot of attention being given to: hydrogen, CCUS. Sustainable aviation fuels and things like that are essentially nuclear, the gas transition and how it plays a role in the whole transition as well. These are some of the things that we're seeing and we're focusing on.
And it's interesting that you talk about the nuances at a regional or country level, because very often in big ticket events such as this, I think the focus is sometimes on the more prohibitive forms of energy for, say, the developing world, sub-Saharan Africa being an example. Dare I mention the word coal in a room such as this, but if that is what people have access to and can afford to run with, how do we start to navigate in a meaningful way this transition to net zero? And this one is for you, Renee.